the heart of Orlando, Florida, the most electrifying show in media, a neighbor's choice. I'm David Gornoski, and thanks again for being with me here in beautiful Central Florida for our special Thursday Science and You edition of the program. Science and You. That's what we do on Thursdays, where we look at innovation and science, and we look at tomorrow, today, looking for people in the market who are actually being contrarian. They're not going along with the standard ways of doing energy or medicine innovation or anything you can think of that advances human progress, but people who are really questioning sacred cows and finding promising solutions that don't require big government or groupthink to discover. And before I get into that, I wanted to just touch on something here locally with Governor DeSantis. He's introduced this new idea in Florida about, doing these vouchers. I think vouchers are really an example of where conservatives go a little bit off. If we are going to start assigning tax dollars into the hands of private schools, what you're going to do is lose the principle behind that which conservatives believe in, which is that really markets and choice and private sector, whether that's a nonprofit school or a for-profit vocational school, whatever it is, that they'll actually be able to provide a better service at a lower cost and higher quality if they were allowed to have more access in markets. But with private voucher programs, you're going to create a subsidized situation, and where private market actors and churches and schools are going to become dependent on, if this thing catches on, where they're going to become dependent on tax dollars. And that's not a good thing. That's only going to make them crippled of their independent voice, and it's only neuters the conservative case for markets and freedom over government taxation to solve problems like education. So I have a better solution. It's one that's been introduced by Congressman Ron Paul. He's now retired, but I think other congressmen, maybe Congressman Thomas Massey out of Kentucky, has introduced the bill, which would give you a tax credit. I think it's $5,000 a year to go to your child's homeschooling or private schooling. So if you want to put your kid in private school or homeschooling, you can take a $5,000 tax credit off of your income to be able to use that as a way to fund your private schooling needs. So there's an example of how you could use freedom to give people more options without having to make them dependent on government subsidies like a voucher program. So we have to be very clear when we are getting into these topics in society that we don't lose sight of where we actually stand. Are we just, fighting over the loot pool in Tallahassee or D.C., saying, oh, well, we want tax handouts too, but we're just going to put them into our private schools instead of your union public schools? Well, what's your stance that you actually have? What principle, what makes you different, really, in principle from your more leftist counterparts who say endless taxation, endless government spending, endless government handouts for every program or every idea in society? So if conservatives are really going to stand in a consistent manner without being hypocrites, they need to be skeptical of things like these little shortcuts to heaven that actually lead to hell. They're not going to get you what you want. And so that's just an example. I'm sure DeSantis has some other ideas. Maybe they're okay. But I just don't think conservatives are ever going to be taken seriously in their defense of liberty and markets and choice and less taxation and dramatic scaling down of government control if they're always playing shortcuts whenever they have power. Always settling for, well, let's take a little bit of government coercion for ourselves. That's why no one buys it. Because when you're presented with two versions of government intrusion into your lives, and the other side is giving you better versions of intrusion, more handouts, more goodies, who's actually going to, if that's your only choice to the public's going to side with the left. Now, if we actually stood for limited government, cutting spending, and cutting subsidies, cutting encroachment, including in public schooling, and allowed more free choice in a true system, allow people to opt out or get a reduction in their property taxes here locally if they want to take their kids out of public school and put them in private or homeschooling. There's an example of using freedom where you're actually being consistent conservatives, where you're actually presenting the voters with a real choice, a vision based on principle and real difference that would actually be attractive in ways that people don't even think are possible, because most politicians don't even give them that consistent defense of liberty. So that's the example that we need to really consider. But this program is primarily going to be about not politics today, but science and market and innovation. And so I'm glad to have here with me my chief science advisor for all things A Neighbor's Choice, Dr. Wei-Ping Yu.
Thank you, David, for having me here.
Well, and I know I'm going a little under the weather today, but I'm still kicking it, and I'm still going to give the most electrifying show you're going to hear tonight on radio. But you're going to help me because
no problem.
This is your time to shine as a science innovator yourself. You have worked as a theoretical physicist, engineering physicist, in a lot of different capacities in many different areas in private and public sector.
That's true.
But all along, you've been willing to challenge a lot of the established assumptions about physics and electrodynamics and all these different theories that we think are, basically dogma.
I believe your audience will be also would love to abandon this called group thinking, and that's how technology develop. It's not based on the group thinking. It's always individual creativity.
Right.
One genius can changing the world. Right. Just like Nikola Tesla, the father of electrical age, one person, and can changing we still benefit from his invention.
I wanted to hit off with just a few questions. And folks, if you have a mystery that you haven't been able to figure out in science, if you have a question regarding chemistry, maybe you're a high school kid, or maybe you're over at UCF right now, 65,000 people over there we're broadcasting to, or maybe you're online watching us around the world through our Facebook live stream or on WFLA iHeart Radio, then you can call in and ask Dr. Yu any question you have. If you have a burning mystery, where did the universe come from? What is electricity? Can we have real nuclear energy that's cheap and affordable and too cheap to meter? You can ask that question. 866-916-5400. That's toll free. 866-916-5400. You can also text 23680, and standard message and data rates apply. But you can go ahead and ask any question you have, and don't feel shy because it's a rocket scientist or a physicist. Dr. Yu's the most humble guy you're going to meet in the field. I've seen him work with, he explained really deep concepts of gravity and electricity to 8-year-olds at events that he's gone to.
So I'm not promise I have all the answers, but I'm willing to open mind to give you honest answer. If I do not have the answer, I will tell you I don't know.
Right. So that's, again, 866-916-5400. If you have a question about innovation, what's possible in physics, what's possible in biology or engineering, you're welcome to ask that tonight because this is the day to do it. And each Thursday, we're going to have special guests. Like last week, we had Berlin Energy, and they talked about what they're doing in low-energy nuclear reaction, which was an interesting concept. The idea that maybe these nuclear fusion reactors, they might never get off the ground. They've been spending billions and billions, right?
Yes, their claim, they already verified, tested, and being proved by Southwest Research Institute, and they wrote a paper about you have a 1 unit input energy. You could potentially up to 27 units output. Of course, practically, so that's theoretical value. Practically, they said it could be at 2.6 times. Is that right?
Right. I think that's what they said.
Yes.
Yeah.
But any time, if you have a generated output energy more than input energy, that's similar to you have a perpetual motion machine.
Right. Yeah,
you can self-supporting, right?
Right.
So we have to vet this technology really careful, but based on what they're saying, could be revolution.
But should we just think about maybe the Green New Deal? They're going to spend $100 trillion on windmills and everything. Wouldn't that be better? We could put windmills on our heads or windmills on our cars and just drive around. Is that better than that type of energy?
Oh, I believe windmill energy has its own unique usage, right? We never dismiss any useful, tools, technologies for certain particular field. But the best way, in my opinion, and we discussed before, actually we can manually create new elements, create those kind of rare elements, use common material. That's what I believe. So basically, we don't have to fight in wars for resource, and actually we can create all the resource.
And that's what Berlin Energy was saying. This company that's doing low energy nuclear reaction as the private sector, they're saying they're getting some type of transmutation.
Yes.
And so we'd have to verify, what they're saying. I know there's other people verifying them at SRI labs over there in California, but that's a promising thing that's related to that same principle. Is transmutation possible? Currently, most people don't even think that is a real thing. Most people think that's woo-woo stuff like alchemy or whatever. But, what you're suggesting and what they're suggesting and others independently is that, no, you can take elements and change them into something else. It's not something that's a fiction.
Right. We do have examples. Many entrepreneurs working on this one, they discovered sometimes you can use common material and transmutate to a new element, new material.
Right.
And
you don't need a big, giant nuclear fusion chamber with millions of degrees, right?
No.
Current establishment physics says transmutation can happen, but only at like high millions of degrees. What is it? What do they say?
That's right. They are talking about, in order to changing the nucleus has positive charged particles, right?
Right.
In order pushing the like charged particle together, this is naturally the repulsion.
Right.
You have to have a high temperature, higher than at the center of the sun.
Right.
So that's why it's so dangerous. Basically, you cannot make it happen, in room temperature. But actually, we find evidence, and many nuclear reaction happened in small quantity, but at the room temperature environment. But we can control this reaction.
Interesting, very interesting. Folks, we're going to take a quick commercial break. You're listening to A Neighbor's Choice, and I'm your host, David Gornoski, with Dr. U. And welcome back to A Neighbor's Choice Radio, the most electrifying show in media. Whether I've got a little cold or not, we're going to kick it up high, and we're going to do the best, because we're going into the real issues, not going to go squabble about, what's government going to spend billions of subsidies trying to squander for their buddies, right? It's always funny how all those green energy companies that are supposed to be like democratic socialism ends up just going to buddies that are friends with bureaucrats and congressmen and women and so forth, people that run these different departments. But we had a question on Facebook. Dr. Yu, you want to ask?
Okay, so very good questions. Okay. The question is quantum tunneling a result of probability math rather than real physical system properties? Excellent questions. Because the quantum mechanics explanation established as a probability wave equation. So basically it becomes a mathematical concept. So my answer, simple. The so-called phenomena of quantum tunneling is not probability math. It's a real, called a real physical system properties. So that's I will give you the direct answer. And it has a second half. So is it very different from conservation of energy? No. in quantum mechanics, somehow, based on the probability, you can have a nuclear reaction. You can have a particles from the center of the sun, right, tunneling through barriers, say cross the wall, cross something based on probabilities. No, I believe this is not probability questions. This is actually a real physical system.
So is quantum tunneling a real thing? It's just something else, or no?
It's different than current explanation. Current explanation believe, so you have some kind of neutrinos, nuclear reactions, right? You have some something, can cross the barrier through them. I believe the so-called cross the barrier is physically cross the barrier because it has a gap. It has because it's neutral particles. It's not easily to be interact with a magnetic field. Yeah.
Very interesting. And you're listening to our Science and You segment with my friend Dr. Yu, physicist, and you're welcome to join in with any questions you may have. It doesn't have to be highbrow. It could be anything. If you have a basic question, if you're a college student or a high school kid, middle school kid, or parent of one, and you want to know how to deal with physics, what's real, what may be kind of inflated in its truth, we're here to answer it. You could call in at 866-916-5400. That's 866-916-5400 to call in toll free.
David, I remember you sent me one question about one experiment. Grapes, they cut grapes in half with the center connected just a little, put inside the microwave.
Yeah, I think
remember that one?
Facebook Justin Fowler asked that.
He
okay.
Wanted
to know what you thought about
I never get a chance to answer
sure,
this
go
one.
Ahead.
So
yeah.
I wanted to answer. So why you cut grapes in half,
right,
but with a little skins connected in the center, and put it in the microwave.
Okay.
And you turn on the microwave, you can see the sparks and see the fire and eventually burning.
Yeah, it was all over the internet. People were asking, what's that about? Why
so
are they
basically,
a fire?
So number one, where comes the fire? The fire, all the lights comes from electricity. When you have electricity, you generate lights, right? So, but the question is, where comes the electricity? Because a microwave create oscillating magnetic wave. The oscillating magnetic wave would, create a motion in the water, in the water, because the water of the grapes. Grapes has a liquid water, right? Liquid water will react the electromagnetic wave, so start an oscillation. When the oscillation, however, normal oscillation will have electricity, but not enough to generate light. In order to generate light, you have to have a high frequency to be a visible light. How they come to reality? Because of the middle connection. So on both sides of the grapes have a high electricity, means oscillation, high oscillation. But that oscillation not enough until in the middle, both sides oscillation will create a collision.
Huh.
When you have a collision, now you have a high collision. No. Collision. Collision, just like car.
Right.
Bumping. If you not use a knife, scratch the concrete floor, you will see lights, right?
Right.
When you have a collision, those kind of will create high frequency of oscillation. So that's what the light is.
Interesting. Well, that's very interesting. So that, there's so many mysteries in nature left to be understood.
Right.
But people have this kind of groupthink submission to, well, I'll just let people TV people tell me.
Interesting. If you separate the two grapes, separate without the connection part, without the collide impact, you may not see the light. So that's why why we have to cut it in half and have to let the little middle section connected, because that's provided high collision, high vibration.
What insights does that give us about electricity?
That means electricity is not the flow of electrons. It's oscillation. It's vibration, oscillational motion of an electron.
So it's not actually a flow.
That's right.
Like that's what the establishment textbook
that's
definition.
common misconception about electricity. You have an electron, have a particle traveling from one side to another side. That's not correct in my research. It's actually oscillation,
which is
vibration.
like a vibration.
Vibration, and the vibration created by when
kind of like a vibration that creates a domino effect, right?
Similar to domino effect.
Interesting.
Yeah. But there's a periodical motion. Yes.
You learn something new every time we have a discussion here. And you don't hear this on, mainstream science and stuff where people, somewhat, a little bit, but there's so much special interest.
David, if you have no other questions, you mentioned about a 5G network. Yeah. This is a hot topic. It becomes even trade war, become even political, right?
Right now Trump is talking about nationalizing the 5G network to make government control it.
Really?
They're worried about other countries having first dibs in America's 5G network. Right. But there are other people who are worried about 5G coming around that will actually affect our health. And there's some people worried about the high power of these cell phone frequencies. So I wanted to ask you about that.
Yes. There's a lot of concerns about the high frequency, there's a wireless network causing cancer.
Right.
And this is real. We do have many experiment evidence say high frequency. So that's why we have a control. So only limited the frequency level, energy level, right? But the 5G tapped into much, much higher frequency band. So then how could this one be safe? How could this one be number one? It's useful because it has a higher frequency, much higher frequency. So it allowed communication. They have a lot higher energy, right? It allows much, much broader
so you can download
communication.
Big, giant files instantly.
Number one is fast.
Yeah.
Number two, it allows billions of people in billions of devices immediately, instantaneously receive the signal because you have a higher frequency band, right? So can serve more people. But how they resolve this high frequency, high energy would be less harm to people. Instead of a 4G, use a big tower, big high concentrated energy. 5G decentralized. Use a smaller station, smaller base into every home, just like an antenna type of things, into every home, into every building. So instead of use huge energy, we decentralize, we use high frequency, but a smaller energy, smaller amplitude.
So don't put your head by that tower.
So that means we can use a smaller energy.
So you're saying it could be healthier than the current 4G?
Depends on how much you 5G network could be just like cover 10 meter or to a few 100 meter range. Right. Instead of the tower, cover miles, right?
Right.
So that means you do not need huge concentrated energy in one location.
And that's the key issue for causing disruption in health and cancer.
That's true. Yeah. So
this actually might be more healthier as it relates to cancer.
Could be.
Possibly?
Could be.
What's the indication we need to determine whether that will be the case?
Oh, we do have, the standards about how much energy, what kind of frequency, with what kind of amplitude we're harming people. There's a special agency study this one, so I will leave for expert to do a.
On the other side of this break, I want to ask Dr. Yu about blue lights. We're using blue light exposure every time we're on our phone and on our laptops and computers. I'm using it right now as I am in this facility. But I want to get into some of the questions regarding the health effects of constant blue light exposure. You're listening to A Neighbor's Choice. I'm David Gornoski. Science and You up next. A Neighbor's Choice Radio is back on the program where we solve problems, not by just standing around and saying, oh, government, what's government going to do? What's our party's going to do for us? But we actually dive in and solve the problems ourselves by challenging toxic groupthink, whether it's in the realm of politics or culture or art or, as in tonight, at our Science and You Thursday night special, where we look at the questions no one's asking in science and innovation, but you need to ask because they unlock all the power of the universe that you don't even know is out there. And if you want to join in on the questions, you can. 866-916-5400. That's 866-916-5400. And I'm going to turn it back over to my chief science advisor, my good friend and theoretical physicist, Dr. Yu. Go ahead and take it away. We have a few more questions come in.
I read two good questions actually from the same gentleman as the first one.
Yeah, Esteban.
Esteban, Young. Okay. So the question is, with black body radiation, okay, why is there frequency but not light? So basically this question asks, what's the relationship between light and frequency? And the second, and another question is it a wave property or particle property? This is excellent questions about the nature of light. So we may not have time to give you all the, but let me tell you one thing. Light, in my research, light is a wave motion, is a vibration wave motion, oscillation of electromagnetic field. Okay. So there is no called particle property of light. It's only due to vibration resonance. When you have a resonance and create the effect like a particle impact. So it is a wave property. It's not particle property about the light. And they'll say, why is there a frequency but no light? Let me tell you, any type of motion due to electromagnetic oscillation, okay, create a motion. Basically, we call the electromagnetic radiation. We call the wave motion. But what's the difference between light? We normally say light means visible light. Visible light require the frequency, say from 400 nanometer wavelengths to 700 nanometer wavelengths. So require at a certain range. So when your vibration frequency reach to that range, we are visible. Below them, so infrared, we cannot see it. Or ultraviolet light, we cannot see it because below our detection of eyes.
What was was there a question about LEDs?
Okay, so yeah, that's another question. That's excellent. This is actually it's an unsolved mystery, and I want to give you my understanding.
So the
LED
question is, lights,
yes, the question is, why don't LED light give off heat? That's true, but it's very bright without heat.
Right.
And another question is, wouldn't the vibration create both heat and light? Excellent. When you have a vibration create heat, or vibration create light, but does not necessarily create heat. So now the question is, so what is light? Light is oscillation of electromagnetic field. As long as you have some source vibrating, so right now we use a common light bulb is a incandescent,
yeah.
Incandescent light bulb. You have a filament inside.
Right.
So why that one generate heat, generate light and generate heat?
Yeah.
Because that oscillation create every single particles in that filament has to vibrate in order to generate light. In order to generate brighter light, you have to have a higher oscillation amplitude. So that's why amplitude high, easy to burn. However, LED light is based on different principle. LED light between the two semiconductor material called P and N type of material. There's a gap, so that basically the oscillation of the electron does not go through the bridge or go through filament. It creates the oscillation of the gap. So that's I would call the electromagnetic field. Create the oscillation of that field. The field is not connected with any material. So what happens? You have an entire field is oscillation because of the two top and bottom different voltage. You have a voltage across the board, across the area of the board. So the whole area create the oscillation in the middle gaps of the electromagnetic material. So that's why you have light, but you don't have heat because you do not have electron particles impact.
We got a question from Stephen Ellis.
Okay.
For Dr. Yu. He says, how does Dr. Yu feel about the theory that sound can travel faster than light?
Oh, that's if we believe light, sound, we consider sound is a compression wave, right? We consider light is a transverse wave. But I do believe, sound traveling in the high density material, extra faster, right? Like the transverse wave travel in the less density wave faster. But in my opinion, whenever you have a light, even transverse wave, you have a sound too, but just undetectable with human ear. Human can only detect 20 hertz to 20,000 hertz, only narrow range of oscillation. But if you use equipment, we can detect, detect there are sound accompanied with any electromagnetic phenomena.
So sound can be faster.
Can be detected through instrument.
Interesting.
Yeah. Because oscillation will create the sound too.
Interesting. So does all oscillation create sound? Or no?
Yes. We can generalize. As so-called sound, we will have to say beyond hearing range.
Does every particle in our body, every organ have its own sound, if you could hear it?
Yes, we do.
Does our liver have a different sound than our kidney?
Yes, we do have the new device. They base on the different sound and can detect the part of the material. I wanted to give a little bit more explanation. This is excellent question about sound and the light. Whenever you have a magnetic oscillation, you have any oscillation in a magnetic field, you have simultaneously, you have a light, have sound, have electricity. They all come together. Just different, human perception has a limitation. So we only can see sound or feel heat, include the heat. They are all related through vibration.
Interesting. Well, and so there's a lot. I want to go back to the body thing. So does, like, for example, does our liver have its own frequency, right? Everybody's liver. I'm just trying to take as an example.
Sure.
Does our heart, each of our hearts, have their own unique frequency, or does all hearts have the same?
Let me tell you how frequency works. So everything have its natural frequency, and as long as you have a different structure, say atomic structure, different weight, mass, you will have a different frequency. I'm thinking different resonance frequency. So when we through signal, what do? We want to use the signal generate free vibration, which always uses their own oscillate at their own natural frequency. So based on the natural frequency, we know the material's density, we know the type of material, the density material, and they're all different.
Right. So there's a lot of implications here that if everything has a vibrational pattern, that our thoughts have a connection to that too, then, right?
That's excellent questions about how brain works. Remember the other day, you brought me an article saying a new discovery, find a new type of communication between two halves of the brain.
Yeah, they separated the halves.
They separated the brain.
And they could communicate.
The normal human brain has a connection, has a joint part, but they separate, find the communication. They believe there's some new type of communication, which I don't believe. That's exactly what I believe brain works. Brain works is not through connection part, okay? Through both sides magnetic field, electromagnetic field of interaction. So it's like magnetic induction, just like a magnetic induction.
So the left and right hemisphere are like positive and negative.
Exactly.
North and south.
Yes. So they cross the gaps. They wireless. That's the nature of brain. Include the mutual two identity twins. They can communicate through their thoughts. Because they oscillate in the same frequency. They can cross the space because there's a magnetic oscillation.
Interesting. So that's how people can sometimes feel like they're on the same wavelength. That's actually literally true in some ways. Huh?
That's the same technology we use to receive a signal from a Voyager 1. Voyager 1 is already out of solar system. It takes like 16 hours in order to receive that signals. 16 hours. Okay, receive signals from, based on what? Electromagnetic oscillation.
Wow. Well, those are a lot of great questions, guys, and keep sending them in. We got one more break, and we'll be right back on our Science and You segment. I'm David Gornoski. We'll see you in a moment. Neighbor's Choice Radio is back, and our final segment here on Science and You with my good friend Dr. Yu, theoretical physicist and slayer of sacred cows. And boy, he's on fire tonight. We've gone through so many topics in just 1 hour. And thanks for your questions. Keep sending them in on Facebook, or you can call in here live at 866-916-5400 or text us at 23680. That's 23680. Text us here in the Orlando metro market area. But I wanted to ask you quickly, what is the blue light? Is that an effect on our health, exposing ourselves to blue light? When I first met you, I heard you talking to a group and you were making a comment about that because they asked.
Because they are really worried about this new LED lights so bright.
Right.
And the difference, number one, the difference between blue lights and the regular without the lights is the color difference means higher energy.
Right.
So what happens with higher energy? Higher energy will create electricity. Whenever you have a light shining on your skin, you feel warm, right? Yeah. Why you feel warm? Because the light is electromagnetic oscillation, right? So oscillation created all the particles in your body. Those have conducting materials, have fluids, induce their oscillation. So that's why you feel warm. So what happens with higher frequency? Higher frequency with higher temperature.
Right.
And create higher temperature, and even worse than that one, it high enough, when the frequency high enough, could break your cell, create cancer. So that's why we try to avoid high frequency.
To avoid. Most people, all of us are on it almost 24/7. You know,
maybe
they go to work, they get on a laptop. That's blue light, right? And they go on their phone. They're at their TV, plasma. It's constant blue light.
Maybe we're more adapted to the high energy lights, but what is the natural light is is green color. So that's why most of the things are green, right? Green is a modest color, is a neutral color. The modest color is healthy for human. I got good, excellent questions.
Sure. We got 1 minute.
So. 1 minute. Okay. I wanted to explain this question. The question is, raised by Stephen Ellis. Said looking like looking through an optical telescope versus an electromagnetic imaging. I wanted to explain why use optical light to a microscope has a limitation. We do not get because optical means use light to shining on that, so reflect the light.
Right.
The object has to reflect light. The reflect light has the size of the object has to be bigger than the light frequency. But once you smaller size of once the size is smaller than the frequency of an optical light, you cannot see it. So what happens with electromagnetic imaging? Let's say SEM. What they do, instead of an object reflect light, they make an object create light. They create high electrical oscillation. When you have oscillation, so every single particles, every single atoms, every single particles inside the body start vibrating. That create its own light. So that's why it gives you such 100 times sharper image or in many cases, hundreds, thousands times sharper image because it created its own life.
Sharper image and a sharper mind than most of the fools you hear on TV. Dr. You for another edition of Science and You on A Neighbor's Choice. I'm David Gornoski. It's been a pleasure being with you, and we'll see you next Monday live at 7 in the evening. Godspeed. Hi, this is David Gornoski, founder of A Neighbor's Choice. A Neighbor's Choice is sponsored by people just like you, making weekly or monthly contributions to support the development of this show, which is dedicated to introducing Jesus' personhood revolution to the broader public. Visit www.aneighborschoice.com, click on Contribute, and start your monthly pledge today. We appreciate